Callan, your orders are clear. Jorel must not be permitted to leave the shrine alive. Believe me when I tell you that failure in this task will cost you and your team dearly, so I hope you are suitably prepared. I've assigned you a small contingent of Legion soldiers, and I suggest you use them. Do not underestimate the man. Many have, and it has been their undoing. We did not expect him to part with the dog, and as a result, we've been unable to track him for several days. As a contingency, we have given him an assignment to deliver an item to the Talos Shrine at White River Gorge. Even though we can no longer track him, he will deliver the item, and when he does, you must be waiting. Killing him in solitude would have caused us difficulties politically. However, eliminating him in Whiterun Hold will send a strong message to Jarl Bulgraf and allow us to prosecute Elisif as a Talos worshipper at the same time. Rulendil assured me that Jorel could be controlled, but his recent defiance has convinced me that he's a liability and growing stronger by the day. We have surprise on our side, so this will be the best opportunity we have to take him out. If you botch this, he may not give us another chance. You need to know his sister has gone missing. We suspect she may have been snatched, but we don't know by whom, and the trail went cold at the rift. We can no longer use her to control him, but he doesn't know that yet. As you know, the rift is Stormcloak territory, and we are finding it difficult to operate there. Let me also say that if you succeed in this mission, the benefits to you and your team will be considerable. I'm prepared to put you in charge of our rift operation, and with Jorel disposed of, we'll be free to focus on undermining the resistance. Good luck. Welcome, dear viewers, to Couch Warrior TV on YouTube. I am the Couch Warrior, and you are watching The Passage, a Skyrim SE Let's Play, featuring Ettient Jorel, the Altmer Ranger. So as you've seen, the delivery of the war horn to the shrine at White River Gorge was an ambush. And we've got somebody skulking around here. We don't know what that's all about, but we have to assume that it's possibly related to this whole mess that we're in right now. It could be somebody trying to report back the success or failure of the Thalmor mission. So we've got many, many more concerns now than we did at the end of the last episode. So what we know from the Thalmor orders that we just read is that it would appear that our defiance, Etienne's defiance on the Sidgear mission, has cost him the confidence of the Thalmor, and they do, in fact, now perceive him to be a threat. So as a result, they have attempted to eliminate him. We've also gleaned some very useful information in that we now understand that somehow they were using Garm to track Etienne's movements, which is alarming. And it was our chance voluntary separation from Garm that may have saved us in this instance, or at least made it more difficult for the Thalmor to track us down. However, it seems that their contingency was to set us up in another way by giving us orders to help Elisif deliver this horn, we're essentially giving them the ability to predict where we're going to be and when. So now Ettient is in this unfortunate position of trying to figure out what to do next, and the revelation that his sister is missing is alarming as well. In one sense, it's a relief, because he can now, at least temporarily, be guaranteed that the Thalmor can't use her as leverage over him, but now he has no idea where she is. All he knows is from the contents of those orders that she was tracked as far as the rift. They made a point of saying that, however, that she was snatched up. So at this point, he has to trust in the thoroughness of the Thalmor and accept the fact that perhaps she has been grabbed. So, how quickly Ettien's world has shifted here. So, the Thalmor obviously thoroughly planned this betrayal. There's somebody there. They actually had multiple Thalmor agents present, as well as that contingent of Legion soldiers that we spotted earlier on. It would also appear, based on the ambush, that somewhere there were additional Thalmor agents concealed in the area that we couldn't see initially. And as soon as we stepped away from the shrine, they emerged and attacked us. At this point, Ettient has circled around to the location where the Legion soldiers were before, in hopes of possibly eliminating them before they can report the failure of this attempt. But it looks like that opportunity is lost. All the Thalmor agents were killed. He killed all of them. But the Legion soldiers escaped. So we have to assume that it won't be long before the Thalmor are alerted to the fact that this attempt on Ettien's life has failed. Now, is this Thalmor? Doesn't look like it. Ettient is going to make sure, though. So at this point, he is clearly, in the throes of the betrayal, operating without a plan. At the moment... Okay, that looks like a vigilant. Okay, we're going to leave it. All right. So now we can take a breath. No point in starving ourselves. That'll just make it all the more difficult to do what we need to do. So first and foremost, we need to understand the changing complexion of our situation. So now suddenly, without warning, we are unable to count on the support of the Thalmor, and the Thalmor have instantly become our new enemy. And now suddenly we have an enemy that is much better organized, much better equipped, much better financed. It's actually pretty grim when you think about it. The Forsworn were unorganized, and we could kind of run roughshod over them in many ways. But the Thalmor are a completely different kind of enemy. They're an enemy with resources and political connections. And all of these things make them even more dangerous. Alright, so we've got a keep here that's kind of blocking our way. We don't know who's in here, but we don't want to find out. We're gonna get past this keep. But we're going to do it by trying to stay back out of viewing range for that guard here. We also have a new mystery to solve. Where is Kerway? Who has her? And why? And it sounds as though we're going to have to get familiar and spend a fair amount of time in the Rift coming up here very soon. So with that in mind... Dead fox. So with that in mind, Ettient has to really collect himself and think about what his next move is going to be. So given the stress and so forth, he's going to lay out his rough bedding, and he's going to try to get some rest here and collect himself a little bit. Let's place it there. That works. Okay, we're kind of out in the open, and this is sort of an elevated area, so it stands to reason it could be kind of cold. So we're just gonna put on the big old cloak and lay down for a sleep. Six seems good. Under the circumstances, I don't know how much sleep he's going to actually get, you know? All right. Well, clearly what the Hound must do here it looks like our mission is going to take us to the Rift now. But we don't have anything to go on. So Ettient is going to venture back to the Lorius farm and have a look for himself and see if he can put any of his natural sleuthing abilities to work to try to come up with any sort of information at all that might at least give him some direction. So he doesn't know his way around, he doesn't know where he's going, and the Rift is a big place. So to just go in there sort of undirected would not be a great situation. If he can avoid that, he's going to do so. But he's got to confirm what his sister's situation is. So we're going to go back to the Lorius farm. We're going to have a look around. We're going to see if there's any information to be gleaned there. And with any luck, we'll be able to head into the rift armed with a little bit of information instead of being completely in the dark. Is it still this vigilant? Yeah. All right. So at this point, we need to move as fast as we can. If we go to the Lorius farm and we find something amiss as well, that will also confirm the validity of the document that we read. It's possible that this agent, this Thalmor agent, could have been sacrificed to feed us false information. So having some way to corroborate the validity of what was in that document would be good. So we need to make our way to the farm, have a look around, see what we can learn. There's the farm right there. I think the key for Ettient right now is trying to... the struggle, I think, to try and continue to use his brain to make decisions. Okay, that is super annoying. Okay, if we can avoid tussling with it, we will. These events have also given us an opportunity to start delving a little bit deeper into the background or the psychology of our protagonist. One of the things that we alluded to many, many episodes ago was this idea that as a, 20-plus year member of probably more than one crew of pirates, that he had made it his business to intimidate other crew members to the point where they would leave him alone, right? He obviously was not there for the camaraderie or to make friends. He was there to disappear. And while we can be certain that as a pirate, he ended up doing some unsavory things, one has to wonder, on a ship of hard-bitten sailors and criminals, what did Ettient do that scared them enough that they would leave him alone, right? Not mess with him? Because when you think about it, they're all criminals, and more often than not, I mean, it's certain that this isn't true in all cases, but pirates, bandits, groups like this quite often tend to be led by those who can overpower and threaten the others. We know he wasn't in charge. We've established that he was not ship captain type of material. He was a cog in the pirate machine. But as a member of that crew, what was it about Ettient that made him an individual that other members of the crew felt compelled to leave alone? Okay, that guard is continuing along his path. Okay, let's get in here. Doors open. Okay, the place is trashed. Nobody in sight. There's no valuables laying around to speak of. It looks like it's been cleaned out of valuables and just sort of randomly trashed. A bottle of Blackbriar Reserve. Blackbriar Mead. Blackbriar Mead. Blackbriar Mead. Nord Mead. There's not much here in the way of clues. The only thing that we have to go on is that there are a lot of empty Blackbriar Mead bottles laying around here in a region where Haunting Brew is the brew of choice. And there is not a single gold coin or valuable that I can see in here. She's definitely gone, but so is her husband, and there is no blood to speak of. And there's a guard patrolling here. Either he was paid off or was completely deaf and blind to the apparent huge party that went on in this house. And the livestock is just left roaming. All right. Ettient needs to make some decisions now. It's time to head to the rift. Now, we've only been partly there, the way there. We know how to get to Iverstad. And we could go to the rift by way of Iverstad. We do know now some trails that will take us up through the mountains and kind of conceal our passage. So at this point, I think Ettient is going to be looking for the most stealthy way that he can get from here to the rift. And we really only know part of the route. So we're going to head up to Valtheim Tower. We're going to find our way across the river and get up into the mountains as quickly as we can, making our way toward Iverstad, and we'll try and develop a plan as we go. So let's get back to what we were talking about before our investigation of the farm. So, on a ship crewed entirely by hard-bitten criminals, what is it about our protagonist that allowed him to keep to himself, right? On a ship filled not only with criminals, but an environment that is obviously ruled by whoever is alpha. And my answer to that is that obviously Ettient is a character we have not fully explored yet. We have seen what Ettient is like in certain situations, and in this situation, let's consider briefly how things started for him, right? In episode 1, he's released into the Reach with nothing but the clothes on his back. Storm clothes. And this is after several years of being imprisoned. So he's released into the Reach with no resources and in a compromised physical state. And probably emotional state as well, right? We sort of get the impression from those Thalmor orders that we read that at that point, the Thalmor were fairly convinced that they were going to be able to control Ettient. Well, that suggests to me that at that point, there was a certain amount of emotional vulnerability about Ettient as well that allowed for the possibility of that level of control. And the assumption is that his Thalmor imprisoners and torturers, are these guys ever going to leave? Had used some methods to try and break him down to a point where they felt like they could control him. And obviously, three years were spent conditioning Jorel for operations like this. They refer to him by his last name. So obviously he was not a nameless, faceless prisoner. They had plans for him. However, an individual who's lived the kind of life that Ettient has probably has reserves of emotional stamina that could probably never be broken down. I mean, a person does not survive the Great War and 25 years on a pirate ship without having some kind of stubborn and everlasting attachment to his psyche, you know what I mean? So they aren't able to completely break him down. And as he grows in strength, and as he gains his independence, and as he is able to make his own decisions and actually operate freely, his emotional strength returns as well as his physical strength. And so, in a way, they've created a bit of a monster. So what we know from this experience then is that he's got some reserves of emotional stamina, just, stubbornness, that make controlling him on that level, on the psychological level, probably very difficult. Okay, that's enough. Can't talk and fight at the same time. So these are the kind of traits that would have served him well on the pirate ship, but I think that it goes beyond that. I think that Ettient has a very dark and scary side that we haven't seen yet, and that is a side that is born of survival, and when he feels directly threatened, it's a side of him that is likely to emerge. We haven't seen it yet, and the reason that we haven't seen it yet is because I believe that Ettient has not been threatened in that way yet. Now, you can say, well, he's being unjustly controlled by the Thalmor and stuff like that. Well, think about it. He's been conditioned for 3 years to the idea that he's working for the Thalmor, and this is how it is. So he emerges from prison with the understanding that if he cooperates, his life is going to go better for him. So there's no direct threat. And I would argue that we also have not seen this side of his personality emerge during his war with the Forsworn. Because his war with the Forsworn was a job. It was the job of warfare. It's not personal. You are the enemy, and my job is to take you out, and so I'm going to take you out with, you know, obviously ruthless efficiency, but there's no emotional attachment to it. He doesn't have any deeply ingrained hatred of the Forsworn. They're just an enemy that needs to be eliminated, and it's a very businesslike approach. But I would argue that this incident is different. This incident is personal, and this will be the first time in this story, after 60-plus episodes, that we've seen him face an enemy with a significant personal investment, right? Even Madanach I would consider to not be an enemy where he had any sort of personal investment. Yes, Madanach needed to be eliminated, but he needed to be eliminated in the same way that an enemy general would need to be eliminated. It's a job, it's a task, it's, you know, if you can eliminate your enemy's leadership, that's just smart warfare. But this is different. Now we've seen him attacked personally. We've seen his family, his sister, who we know, even though he's estranged from, he cares about. We've seen him attacked directly. And this is the first time we've seen him not only attacked personally, but seen an enemy like this step directly into his path. And this is where I believe we start to see the potential for encountering a side of Ettient that we haven't seen before. In other words, a trigger. We see a trigger in the growing personalization of this war. Now, not only does he have a new enemy in the Thalmor, he's been betrayed and his sister is missing. He's been personally attacked. And nothing more dangerous than the wild animal backed into the corner. It's a cliche, but it's true. And now we see Ettient backed into a corner. And so from a roleplay perspective, I see this phase of Ettient's development as a transformation. And there are some potential upsides, obviously, to all of this, because we're going to see a broadening of in the scope of Etienne's personality. We'll see a broadening in that. But we, as part of that, what the negative side that comes with that is this dark side. And what is this dark side? I think right now what we understand it to be, and we're going to, you know, even I don't understand the full scope of this, but as I see it from the roleplay side of things, is an emerging capacity for brutality. And on a pirate ship where you're constantly looking over your shoulder and everybody's looking out for number one, and the ship is ruled by the strongest, and, you know, those who are timid get eaten alive, I sort of see it as the kind of situation where he's like the brand new prisoner delivered to the prison, and the first thing you need to do is establish that you're a person who shouldn't be messed with. And he arrives on that crew and picks the biggest guy and utterly destroys him. And from that moment on, he's got a reputation for being an individual who shouldn't be messed with. And so while he is a trusted member of the crew gives him a wide berth. They don't interact with him. They don't mess with him. They leave him alone, and he does what he's asked to do, and that's it. And so he lives his life on that ship, spends 20 to 25 years in basically isolation, even though he's among a large group of men and women. He's isolated himself. And that's obviously in part out of personal choice and preference, just because of what we know about him, but it's also, you know, a survival technique, right? If he doesn't get close to anybody, if he intimidates everyone, then no one's going to mess with him. He's not going to have any trouble, and he can just be free to be. So we now enter a new phase in Etienne's character development, and we get to see perhaps the vicious, more rabid side of the Hound. Which I think is exciting from, you know, just character development. It gives us more to consider and starts to round him out. But it also gives us these great opportunities to talk about new vulnerabilities and weaknesses, right? It also gives us an interesting opportunity to talk a little bit about game mechanics. And what does this bloodlust look like? How does it manifest itself in game? And how do we play it out from a technical perspective? What makes sense? What's fair? And what is it that we could do in game that would lend color and excitement to a character who I would argue is already pretty colorful? So chew on that one for a little bit, friends. Think about it. Let me know what you think in the comments. I've got some ideas of my own, but I'm interested in hearing yours as well. Is that a body? Is nothing of value, though. We've jumped all the way down here. Let's see if we can get back up. We've got to cross this river. It's imperative that we get across the river. Okay, we're going to zoom way out. Sorry for those of you who are getting motion sick. Take your Dramamine. It's kind of how it is with all these trees here, too. Every time I circle around him to see what he's doing, we get one of those deals, right? Where it zooms in and out again as it goes around the objects in the environment. That just kind of, I think, adds to the nauseating nature of the effect, but... Alright. So I've done a lot of talking in this episode about this stuff. We'll have many, many more episodes to kind of explore all of this. But there's a lot of things to consider. So we have a change in enemies, we have a change in situation, we have a change in his outlook on the world, his threat level. You know, all of these things are changing kind of all at once. So there's a lot that we need to unpack, and it'll take a few episodes to do it, so that's okay. That's okay. But I'm always excited when we kind of get to that point where in a character's development where new things are happening when we hit turning points. So with that one single event, that one betrayal, the entire world looks different now, right? And so, you know, quite often on the podcast, for example, when I'm talking about character development, I talk about creating turning points for characters, moments at which they can sort of reinvent themselves. And those moments are all over the place if you really want to look for them, but some are more obvious than others. In this particular case, one of the things that we know about this game is that if you've played it as long as I have, you know that there are situations in the game where the Thalmor will leave you alone and situations where they will attack you. And one of the places in the vanilla game where they always attack is when you deliver that horn, because there is a Thalmor agent there who is looking out for Talos worshippers. Well, one of the cool things about having so much experience with the game is you can grab something like that and you can kind of plan ahead for it. And yes, I mean, I know it's coming, but that's part of the beauty of this whole thing. I still find that to be fascinating. So there's a, I think, there's a very different kind of fascination with a game when you're playing it for the first time than there is when you're playing it for the 15th time. And that's where I think we kind of create the separation between role players and non-role players. Non-role players would basically say, okay, I've played through this game, I've quote-unquote beat the game, and now I'm moving on to the next game, right? Role players are looking at a game like this and saying, yes, I've already unlocked many of the game's secrets, but what would it be like to go back and re-experience the content from this perspective or that perspective? And that's why I think for role players like us, this game is infinitely playable, because that encounter with a Thalmor means a completely different thing to this character than it would mean to any of my other characters. Suddenly, that minor event of being attacked by Thalmor at that location becomes a pivot point for the story. The game developers didn't intend it to be a pivot point, but it is one for us because we make it so. And that's what I think is so damn cool about Skyrim. And if you're a role player, the more you learn and understand, the more quests that you experience, the more roleplay tools you add to your toolbox. So it's a different way of thinking about a game like Skyrim. You know, you always have the detractors who are like, oh, I've been through that quest. Why would I want to do it again? I want something new. And then you have those people who, their imagination runs wild and they say, hey, that was a cool thing. What if I did it this way? What if I did it that way? That's what I think this is all about. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to call it here. I want to thank you for watching this episode of The Passage. It has been extraordinary fun. Give some thought to all the information that I've dropped on you in this episode. Think about it. Interested in your comments regarding the shift, and I will see you next time.